let's talk about churches. You were really, really adamant last year and earlier this year about pastors being a shepherd. Pastors actually not just being a Bible teacher, not just being a discipler, but being a shepherd and saying, this is my congregation, this is my local church. I'm going to be the one to say whether we meet or not the government. And there was a lot of pastors that this was encouraging. There were a lot of pastors who stood up. You know, at first it was very understandable when people shut down. We didn't know what was going on. But once the data came out and we saw this is not what it was, originally feared to be, a lot of pastors woke up. A lot of pastors did not, though. And so I remember you being very adamant about that. Now, it looks like we are potentially going down that same road again. It was looking like we're a little freer, all right? A little more free, a little less Cuba, a little more America, right? But now we're getting these threats of forced vaccinations. We're getting mask mandates. So logically speaking, historically speaking, the potential is that we're going to see some more shutdowns. And churches are going to have to face that question, and pastors are going to decide, am I going to be a Daniel or am I not? Your thoughts?
Yeah. You know, churches are in a really hard place. So I'm going to toss that out there to begin with. In March of 2020, when COVID started, they really did not know what to do, and they didn't know what was best. And so I do think we need to give a lot of grace for people to say, hey, we know that you are doing your best in a really difficult situation. But I think also what we saw is that a lot of churches weren't prepared to stand up and do what was right in the face of adversity. The churches are the place where people have to come to and be equipped to then go out into the world. And one of the questions I had this last week at my town hall is, let's talk a little bit about mental illness and suicide. And in our state, we saw a huge rise in mental illness and suicide. And this is where I called many churches and I said, when some were shut down, you guys need to open your doors and figure out a way how you feel is best. Figure out a way to serve the most vulnerable in this time, because it is a really difficult time for people in our state. And what I actually started realizing during COVID was that the network of churches and government were not very good. There wasn't much communication between myself and many of the pastors and church leaders in our community. And I believe that if we want to change a community, it starts with talking to the church leaders, talking to the business owners, talking to the parents, and allowing them to be informed. So one of the things that I've done this summer is work with the pastors in our district. Actually invited many of them. We had, I think, 40 of them to the State House, had a luncheon together. We talked about standing up for truth in the public square, what that looks like. So there is this connection between government and the church. And my voice to the church over and over again in our community as we're looking at potentially more shutdowns or mandates and orders is to say, you are accountable to your flock, to God. You're not accountable to the government for what you do and how you lead the hearts and minds of your church. And it's close to impossible to lead well when you shut your doors and you stay in your home as a pastor and you don't reach out and serve the most vulnerable. And what I would say even more is that, look, you can figure out a way that you can do it in a safe manner. Absolutely. The grocery stores were still open. You can figure out that. And that's where we give a lot of grace for how you're going to go about doing it. But to shut your doors and to turn your back on people in their most vulnerable point is not the way of Jesus.